Mondo cool. That's right, boys. Mondo cool.
Tales of Graces F is an upscaled PS3 port of the original Tales of Graces for the Wii, which was only released in Japan. The Tales series is a series of action RPGs that are all in separate continuities and do not require playthroughs of older games in the series in order to enjoy the other entries unless they're direct sequels. The graphics in Tales of Graces F is unfortunately a mixed bag. Like I previously mentioned, this game is an upscaled port of a game on the Wii, and it shows. While the PS3 version is sharper and clearer, the graphics themselves are the same as they were on the Wii. Despite this, however, the graphics do look very colorful, almost watercolor even. In terms of art direction, the game looks really great, but in terms of raw graphical power, the graphics aren't the best. The game is also punctuated nicely with animated sequences in the game. They do a good job of showcasing some of the more action-oriented cutscenes in the game, and are generally nice to watch. During skits, instead of the face portraits we've seen in other Tales games, we now have full body portraits instead, which show off great emotion for the characters during these sequences. The music in this game is not the best we've seen by Motoi Sakuraba, but it's by no means bad. Honestly, it's pretty forgettable, and there aren't any tracks that really stand out from the pack, but none of them are particularly bad either. The voice acting in this game is also a mixed bag. There are a few big-name actors here, like Laura Bailey, who does Sharia, Steve Staley, who does Hubert, Kate Higgins as Pascal, and Jameson Pierce, who does Malik. They all perform as well as expected for seasoned voice acting. However, other characters, particularly of less important ones, are not as handled as well. Asbel's voice actor's okay, and the person who does Sophie sounds like she's struggling to pull off the Rei Ayanami-esque voice acting. However, I have to say overall the voice acting is tolerable, and I actually felt some of the weaker voice actors eventually melded into their characters throughout the game. The game stars Asbel Lant, the main protagonist for Tales of Graces F. Similar to Ocarina of Time and Breath of Fire 3, this game starts when the main characters are children instead of adults, and shows us their backstory. The game then skips 7 years into the future, and that is where the bulk of the experience comes from. I felt that the childhood arc, while necessary, dragged out for a little too long, and I would have preferred if they just shortened it a bit. Luckily, if you decide to do a New Game Plus, the game gives you the option to skip the childhood arc entirely. However, when the time skip occurs, this is when the plot starts to become much more interesting, and it escalates from there. Like in typical Tales fashion, the characters in this game are all uniquely defined and are incredibly charming. This is helped by the previously mentioned skits sprinkled in the game. If certain conditions are met, you can watch a skit, which will introduce history about the world, further explore character backstories, and sometimes just there for fun. It's nice seeing the characters interact with each other, as they usually either have something interesting to say, or they're just having fun with each other. It's nice to see their antics, as they like to mess with each other, like how actual friends would act. Speaking of friends, that's actually one of the negatives I have for this game's story. Friendship is a very obvious and strong theme in this game. There isn't anything inherently wrong with that, of course, but it's just something that's brought up way too much, and it can be annoying. Other than that, I found the story very interesting. The story is a very strong justification to continue playing the game, as you generally want to know what happens next. Not everything that happens will go exactly as you expect, and to see the conclusion of it all is a fun ride. The story also extends into a prologue chapter after the end of the main story known as Legacies and Lineages, which was made exclusively for the PS3 version. It furthers the story and shows what the characters have been doing a year after the events of the main game, and introduces a new threat that must be stopped. Honestly, I was pretty surprised with the epilogue chapter, as it actually fits very well without feeling thrown in and tacked on. Now, for those familiar with the typical Tales battle system, Tales of Graces F changes it up, and does some unique things. What's the same, however, is being restricted to a one-way movement, which has been a staple of the battle system of older Tales games. However, like some of the newer Tales games, You can hold down the L2 button to allow free running and to break from the two-way movement. Exclusive to this game, however, is another way of breaking from the two-way movement is the use of dodging. Another new element added are the assault arts. Typically in older Tales games, you just press the X button for a normal 3-hit combo, with a very typical type of sword swing. In Tales of Grace's F, we are instead provided with these assault arts that give us 4 branching trees of attack skills that are different depending on how you aim the analog stick. Whether you're holding it left, right, forward, or neutral, all of the branches offer different attacks. This game also has burst arts, which act very much like our base and arcane arts from previous Tales games. The biggest difference, however, is that instead of requiring technical points in order to use these attacks, instead the game makes use of the chain capacity, or CC system. Basically, each move requires the cost of a certain amount of CC, from both assault and burst arts. And you can use as many moves as you want so long as you have enough CC to use them. After you use up your CC points, you have to wait a second or two, depending on how much CC you have, for the points to refill and then continue attacking. I would say that this game, more so than other Tales games, puts more emphasis on blocking and dodging than ever before. Dodging, by the way, also uses up a point of CC. Now, another interesting aspect of the combat is the Elif gauge. There's a bar on the left side of the screen during combat. Half of it is blue and the other half is red. When the blue half fills, it will cause an Elif burst. When the red half fills, it will cause an Elif break. These bars are filled by hitting and getting hit during battles. When the Elif burst occurs, your CC counter is gone and you can unleash as many attacks as you want during the allotted time, and a number will appear under the Elif gauge. When you attack the enemy, this gauge will fill up to 3 times. This is what allows you to perform Mystic Arts. Mystic Arts are essentially your character's most powerful attacks. The game will go into a cutscene showing your character attacking the enemy. An Elif break, however, is the exact same thing, except the benefits only apply to your enemies instead. It's a good double-edged sword-like system, as it gives both the enemies and the player an equal chance to make a comeback. An Elif burst or break can turn the tide of battle and can make a losing battle into a victory and vice versa. The combat system in Tales of Grace's F is honestly some of the best the series has to offer, as it offers many different combo possibilities, and it's also coupled with a very deep and non-linear character progression system known as the title system. Titles in previous Tales games were either just there for decoration or supplied some rudimentary stat boosts. However, in this game, it's completely different. Depending on what you do in the game, such as progressing the story to a certain point, or using a certain move a certain number of times, or a certain kind of attack, and, among other things, you will get different titles. These titles all carry 5 different skills, and they range from regular stat boosts to increasing your maximum CC, as well as new assault and burst arts. There's a great number of titles for each character, and due to this, it can serve to build extremely different teams depending on how you decide to make use of the title system. The way I develop my party, because of the title system, will be most likely completely different from how you do it. It's very flexible as well, as it allows you to set it on an automatic system. If micromanaging your skills with the title system doesn't appeal to you, there's really no need to worry. You just set it on automatic and the game will handle it for you, if you so desire. And you can simply focus on hitting things. Another neat thing is, if you don't feel like fighting, the game also lets you set your characters on automatic as well, and they will fight for you. This also goes the other way. You can set all the characters on manual, and you can actually have local multiplayer, which can be pretty fun with some friends over. You can also go into the skill list for each character, and you can turn them all off or on individually, in case you want them to use certain abilities in combat, or if you want them to focus on other skills, more so than others. Outside of combat and micromanaging, I wanted to quickly mention the use of the L1 button. Whenever you're lost or stuck, holding the L1 button will tell you what your next objective is. Tales series has always used a journal to retell the events of the game, in case you need a refresher. However, the new use of the L1 button to immediately tell you where to go is incredibly useful and very handy. The game still uses the journals like the older Tales games have, so in conjunction with both, you probably will almost never get lost, which is a godsend. The game world itself is also a bit smaller than most RPGs, and there's no real hub world to speak of like in other Tales games until the very end of the game, but it acts more like a point-and-click list than having to physically walk or fly to each location. Personally, I really like this, as it kept things organized, straightforward, and really quick, and there isn't any aimless wandering or getting lost. Tales of Grace's F is a phenomenal entry into the Tales series. While it's held back in some areas from being basically a portable Wii game, the core game itself is so well made that it shines through and creates one of the best experiences in the series to date. With its lovable characters, intriguing plot, and addictive gameplay, this game will rarely disappoint both veterans and newcomers to the series. This has been Shintai, everyone. Take it easy.